How you guys doing? Somebody somebody told me that if I would just start doing like these video messages to I don't know if it's to express certain things that supposedly it's supposed to help or something. Or rather, I was watching this lady. Her name is I'll get it for you. Tiffany Sedaris. She was talking about understanding the narcissist parent and why it is that the oldest child always gets the raw end of the stick. And she gave a response. I guess she was responding to somebody else's, and she really came up with something that's pretty good. And her not being the oldest in her family, I think she was pretty close. She called it the surveillance camera. That kind of caught me a little bit, and I said I've never done a video, but I'm going to do one just in response to her analyzation of the scapegoat. I'm sorry, for the narcissistic parent. A lot of times, I mean, I'm nobody like these big time YouTubers, or this is my first video when it comes to these kind of thought processes and stuff, and something that I used to think was very private, but you know what? It is what it is. I've already learned to deal with certain things, and there's no sense in me trying to hide from anybody. I wasn't the perpetrator or whatnot, so there's no reason why I should even have any embarrassment. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, first, I forgot. My name is Marco. They call me Maverick. Ever since I was a kid, I guess I was labeled the troublemaker or whatnot. But anyway, long story short, when it comes to her analyzation of the surveillance camera, I thought that was pretty unique. But she said that it was her power over her oldest son that she had out of wedlock, and once they got rid of him, that it was her power or something, and that's why I deviated a little bit from her point, and this is where I'll take over. In my humble opinion, I mean, I know it may not be for what you guys have been through, but as far as a narcissistic parent, especially when it's a father, it always seems to anyway, in my life, it's always seemed to be that there was that fight. When you have the oldest, I think that when you have the oldest child be the scapegoat, it's because it's kind of like what she said about the surveillance camera, that he's, but see, it's kind of like this meme that I saw that says, "Stop lying, dude, I was there." You know what I mean? So I can hold my father accountable for what I experienced, and no matter if my mother as the enabler or my father, the narcissistic person, has got his little control over her, I can, since I don't live with him and her, I feel for her, because when you try to even communicate with her, she's just a shell of who she used to be. If he's speaking and she tries to speak, hey, be quiet, and speak, and it's just so heartbreaking to see such a smart, intelligent woman that was very successful when she was working, brought down to rubble. They can't even opinionate in her own home. To me, these narcissistic people, they're weak, and because they want to control everybody and whatnot. And me, being the oldest, being the scapegoat, which I wear that badge with honor. The way I see it is, me being around, or me being able to hold him accountable to what he has manipulated everybody that goes around him to have forgotten and forgiven him. That constant reminder of his guilt, of whatever, what, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? So if I'm not there, or he pokes at me to get after me or whatever, like a joke, but because there's so much stuff underneath that little argument or that little poking fun, he makes himself the innocent one. To see the way he is, man, I'm trying to play with him, and look what happens. Yeah, but there's a lot of unresolved issues. So before, especially with a male, being the oldest, when the intimidation doesn't work anymore, when his ability to not create fear in you anymore, And I had my standoff with him, and I looked at him in his face, and I told him, I said, at the end of the day, you know, you're an asshole. And it was in front of all my family members. It was almost like like an intervention, but it happened because he threw out an outlandish deal to get me to bait on it, and I decided this was the time to let him know that he wasn't going to intimidate that little boy that he used to back in the day, and he can't scramble my mind and, oh, it didn't happen, and toodaloo, toodaloo, toodaloo. He can't do that no more. And whenever I would bring it up to try to find some sort of healthy ground, everybody's, oh, come on, man, let that go, man. But I wanted closure. I wanted him to own his responsibilities, which we all know they don't do. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep holding him to it. So what does he do when it's no longer the ability for him to use his intimidation? He's a Marine or whatnot, Air Force. You got to spell your name right. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so when he doesn't have that intimidation factor, and whenever I told him that to his face, and I said, you know what, let's find out what it is that you're all about, because you're not going to intimidate me, you're not going to scare me or whatnot. And the funny thing is, my brother-in-law, my sister, my brother, everybody was around, and I said, I kind of went a little overboard, but I said, and all these people right here, they're afraid to tell you to your face but I'm not. At least I tell you to your face that you're an asshole. And then I told my mom that she was a bigger asshole because she covers his bullshit. Okay? So that being said, the reason, once they do not have that power over you, they don't have that intimidation factor, they hit you where it hurts. And where that would be for me was, it used to be my mom, or who used to be my mom. I had to separate myself from that, and it was tough, and it's still tough. She calls now, and I still don't answer. I mean, it's not worth it for me to get sucked back into that. We live maybe about a 10-minute drive from one another, and whenever I used to make the effort and be the one always trying to seek forgiveness and approval for something that really wasn't my fault, when it was them they're supposed to be, apologizing, but that's another story. They'll never do that. She would say, oh, well, it's just that you're just too far away and this and that. 10-minute drive, y'all. 10-minute drive. Yet she would, for my middle sister and my little brother, they drive to San Antonio, which I'm from the Valley. It's like a 4-hour drive or a 2-hour drive to go pick up my brother's kids and stuff. They never babysat my kids. They never looked at them. And I'm getting to a point that where he hit me, before it used to matter, and now I don't mind, so he don't matter. Yeah, but he knew that my mom and I had a really good bond, and the only way he thought he was going to hurt me was by turning her against me. Well, that worked for a little while, but now that I realize that she's just either not strong enough, or maybe doesn't want to, or is participating or whatnot, if somebody's not going to fight for you, you shouldn't waste your time to fight for them. Everybody you lose in your life isn't always a loss, and it's kind of hard to understand that, knowing that you have a spy that's against you, that acts like your best friend, especially when it's your mother. You would think that she would always have your best interest, but once they're manipulated by a narcissist, like they can go back and blame his military background and has all these things for her to feel sorry for. He's got his nails way embedded in her, that even if I salvaged anything out of her, it would tear me up, and it'd only be a fraction of who she was. She's more like a robot now, and she just does what he says, and if he says go, we go, and he tells her to be quiet, and it's disheartening to witness. But I had to escape from this little communist little pleasure island I used to live when I left at 17 and never went back. But during this transition of getting me apart, when I would go through my mother would step up, so then when I was gone, he used his time to say, oh, this is where I can get him. So he did. But now I've forgiven him for me, so that, because he's not gonna use that on me no more, But I was just wanting to shed light on the fact that, especially when it's a male, what they want is the competition gone. Okay, so why is the scapegoat the oldest? It's because the oldest has witnessed everything and without a doubt cannot be manipulated into saying, doodle doodle doodle, that didn't happen. One time that I brought it up to my mother, she said something to the fact of, oh, come on, I forgave him a long time ago for that. It wasn't that bad. First and foremost, you can't tell me what I've been through and what I feel. Secondly, you live with him, so he's sucking up to you or whatever he's trying to do. Plus, there's obviously a romantic deal with it, so you can learn to forgive by forgetting. As a son, you should never ever fear your father or fear your parents. Home is where you should be able to be comfortable, where you run. Like when you used to play tag and this was base, But as for me, it just never was. It was always running away so that I could pretend my home life wasn't real. And when she tried to belittle my experience by saying she forgave him, it's very insulting, Especially when, as I was growing up, I jumped at 14. I mean, even when I was 8 the first time, but all the way up till I was 17 years old, I would jump in and be the punching bag so that she could get away. And you would figure that she would step up for that person that did that for her when she put me in that unorthodox, that real hard position where she's getting beat by my dad and she's looking at me with these eyes like, I shouldn't be asking you for your help, you're a kid, but help me. And then I had my little sister, doing the same thing, and it's just, it is what it is. And he denies, oh, it's not even that bad, he's just so exaggerated. Of course, because it doesn't convenience him. So I'll cut this whole thing right here and just say, out of sight, out of mind. And if he can't see me, he cannot remember his bad stuff. So that in essence is what it is. That's, in my opinion, what it is to be a scapegoat. Hope that helped. All right. Thanks so much.